Go, 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 go.
3, 2, 1, 4 tires.
Still there, inside.
What a jump! What a jump!
The track is wet. It's good.
Still there, clear.
3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Foreign Field Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Caplupo, joined by Steve Ray, Wesley Riddle, and Sam Dooley. We are here for a Spire Motorsports 2026 season preview. Without further ado, let's jump right into the stats. Spire in 2025, they had 108 races, 0 wins, 6 top 5s, 17 top 10s, an average finish of 20.7, an average start of 18.8, 3 poles, and 238 laps led. The biggest difference this season is Daniel Suarez will go from Trackhouse Racing over to Spire Motorsports, replacing Justin Haley in the number 7. Suarez finished 29th in points last year with Trackhouse, so we'll talk about him last in this video, in this podcast later on. Trackhouse had more top 5s. They had more top 10s. They had 3 more poles that they didn't have in 2024, and they led a lot more laps in 2025. So it seems like Spire Motorsports, they've invested a lot of money into the resources and the personnel in 2025, and it seemed like they took the right step, just haven't found victory lane just yet. We'll start off with their highest finishing driver in points, and that is Michael McDowell. In 2025, he started all 36 races, finished 22nd in the standings, 1 spot better than he did in 2024 at Front Row Motorsports. He had no wins. He had 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s, an average finish of 18.2, an average start of 15.7, 2 poles, 2 DNFs, and he led 96 laps. Now, what we don't have listed there is McDowell actually scored 110 more points in 2025 in the Spire Chevy than he did with Front Row in 2024. And all that did was translate into 1 spot better in the points. But 110 points, that is basically 2 races worth of points. So you see, in the 34 car, McDowell had 6 poles in 24. So the raw speed was there. A lot of it was on super speedways, but the raw speed was there. It was just the performance throughout the race just didn't work out for that 34 team. And when McDowell made the switch over to Spire, it felt like it was a lateral move at the time. But I think in the long term, it's going to help out McDowell. He had a chance to win Texas and just got past at the end of that race and then overdrove it when he could have taken a top 5 and just kind of pounded it in the wall off of turn 2 late in that race. But McDowell, you're always going to see him at the road courses. He's always really good there. And, the average finish going up 3 spots is pretty big. So I think there's some good things for McDowell on the horizon going into 2026.
I could see big growth coming out of the 71 team this year, going from an organization that he was at for quite a number of years with Front Row to now all of a sudden switching teams and manufacturers over to Chevy and Spire and the 71 team. I think now that they've had a full season put together and they've already improved on some statistics from the year before, I think now having a full season under their belts, I think that they can take what they've learned from 2025 and build on it going into 2026. I don't know if that would translate into any wins necessarily, but I do see growth in Michael McDowell, and I think that will be built upon going ahead into 2026.
I think a lot of the time you look at the road courses, he's always a guy that's contending inside the top 5. The Chicago street course race, I feel like, was the big one that people forget. SVG obviously won, but he was chasing McDowell for a good part of that first stage. And, you could say that maybe SVG was playing it careful, but at the same time, maybe McDowell was too, because he's got the veteran experience. I feel like people forget McDowell's been around since 2008, and he's been at the very bottom of these cars, and he's also had his moments at the top, of course, winning the Daytona 500 a few years ago. So McDowell's a guy. He's always been, I feel like, a very competitive driver. I just wish he could get a little bit more aggressive in the sense of just trying to put the commitment in towards being a guy that can win on a mile and a half track. If he can translate some of the speed that he'll show at moments in those races and carry it over to the finish line. I think Texas was a good example last year, or it might have been earlier this year, where he was in the top five and just made a couple mistakes there at the end to where he ended up crashing the car, having a DNF. If he could just kind of keep his composure a little bit better, I think at the end of these races, we saw it at Talladega last year where he wrecked himself off the bumper of Brad Keselowski. He could easily, you know, I feel like find more consistency and just get to the finish line. Avoid losing those points that you would lose by making those over aggressive moves. If he can do that, then he's going to be. I feel like he's going to be borderline of making the top 16 in points, but it's you get rid of the mistakes that he makes, and it's achievable. Um, just a matter of trying to find consistency, but just get a little bit better on the mile and a halves. And if they can do that this year, which Spire obviously on an upward trajectory, then he could definitely make it. His consistency at times can be impressive, but just avoid those mistakes.
Now, for Michael McDowell, I asked the question: will Michael McDowell be mathematically still in contention to make the chase going into Daytona, the final race of the regular season?
Yeah, I think he'll be in contention. I don't think he'll make it, unfortunately, but I do think that when you go into Daytona, there will be a few drivers that will be on the bubble in a sense. And I do think that McDowell will be one of them. I just unfortunately don't think it will be enough to get into the chase. But I do think that he'll be in that back half of the top 15. I think he'll be in that 17th to 20th range.
I'm going to back exactly what you said. I don't think he'll make it. I feel like stage points might keep him outside of being in that bubble for Daytona. Throughout the regular season, there's going to be I feel like the stages add this opportunity for a bigger spread in points, which might make it to where Daytona's kind of anticlimactic, where there's not a battle for anybody outside to make it in. Unlike a win and you're in, right, where everybody has a chance. So um, if he can clean up mistakes, he'll be in contention. But if he makes the ones that he did last year and even in years prior, he's going to be somewhere in that range. And I'm going to say maybe on the back end. So put me right around 19th or 20th.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with not really. He just hasn't really showed the consistency to me for me to confidently say, yeah, I can put that guy in contention for the top 16. We've kind of seen who Michael McDowell is too. Like, I don't think we're gonna see anything new out of Michael McDowell this late in his career because, like Wes said, he's been racing since '08. He's been around. Not to say he's a bad driver, not to say that he doesn't have the possibility of being up there. It feels like if you look at like a Hocevar, who if he cleans up his mistakes, I could see him contending for the top 16, maybe even close to top 12, top 10, because we've yet to see the pinnacle of what Carson Hocevar can be if he cleans up all of the stupid stuff he's been doing. With McDowell, it kind of feels like we know who he is. It's gonna be He's going to be up there. He's going to be a contender for the road courses, a mile and a half here and there. But he doesn't show the consistency on the mile and a half enough for me to say that he'll be up there contending for the top 16. I don't think he'll be bad by any means. But once again, like Wes was saying, the stage points will create a disparity there, and I feel like there are more people ahead of him that I would trust their consistency, or at least their upside. Now, if a lot of people make mistakes, I mean, I don't count him out because I'm not saying he's inconsistent. It just feels like he's consistently about a 15th place car And if he has a 15th place car, he's going to finish 15th. He's not one of those guys that's going to go out there and turn a 15th place car into a top 10 or a 10th place car into a top 5. Like, if he has the speed, he'll get there. And of course, he's a threat on road courses, but it feels like overall there's not enough consistency. And we know who Michael McDowell is. So I don't see it happening around the chase bubble for him.
One thing I'll add that might help McDowell is just with the team that he's in, and that's being Spire Motorsports. You look at last season where Zane Smith was in the car, they barely, barely missed out on top 30 in points. And then McDowell, he ended up scoring almost 200 points more than what Zane was able to do in that car. And thinking about Spire 5 years ago, I mean, they weren't even a contender. They were scratching to even pretty much keep their charters in the sport, just with, where they were running on a weekly basis and, outside of the top 30 regularly. And within 5 years, I feel like they've made up a pretty significant gap. And that's hard to do in the top tier of motorsports. I know some drivers and some teams like Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski, they've kind of already, had some, added help. And a team like Spire came in with pretty much nothing. And obviously they've got Hendrick support. They're trying to make Spire an empire. And I think that there's a good chance that, if we've seen the growth that has kind of transpired in the last 5 years, it can continue to improve. We haven't seen any signs of it slowing down, so that might be able to see, or at least lead for Michael McDowell to have a better season than last year. And same with the whole Spire camp.
Yeah, that team just puts me. I see them staying around the 20th to 22nd range. So I'm gonna say they're not gonna have a chance. If they do, I'd say it's a long shot going into Daytona, like 40, 50 points out going into Daytona.
Finishing one spot behind Michael McDowell in points was his teammate Carson Hocevar in the 77, coming back for his second full-time season with Spire Motorsports, finishing 23rd in points. As we start to look at some of these statistics, there are some big red flags that jump out to me with this. Obviously, no wins, still chasing his first career win. 2 top 5s, 9 top 10s. Those are both improved upon, but his average finish dropped off and finished 3 spots worse than he did the year before. Now, his average start was about 2.5 spots better than that. 1 pole coming at Texas, but the big thing that jumps out to me and what really hindered their season was 8 DNFs on the year. Some self-inflicted, some just mechanical failures. But he was greatly improving on his laps led, over 100 laps led more than the year before. The words that I would use to describe Hocevar's season, a couple words come to mind: erratic and polarizing. There were definitely some flashes of greatness, and then definitely some times where you kind of, watch what's going on, you scratch your head wondering what's going on. Starting back at the beginning of the season was part of that 3 wide finish at the caution flag at the first Atlanta race. So nearly had his first career win there. But just a few laps prior to that, made a really aggressive move on Ryan Blaney that spun Ryan Blaney to, spun him out in turn 1. Then you look at the Coke 600, was running top 5 there, had an engine failure towards the end of the race. You look at Michigan, was leading a lot of laps at Michigan, had a left rear tire go down. So those were some of the things that were hurting the 77 team. But then you started to add in the run-ins that he had with Ricky Stenhouse, the run-ins that he had with Kyle Busch. He was not making very many friends at all last year. And there were a lot of drivers that I think were wanting to give him a taste of his own medicine. I know that after that Atlanta race, he was having talks with Ross Chastain. Kind of the details of what was said wasn't really released, but we can kind of read between the lines there. So Hocevar, if you're new to NASCAR, if you're looking for a driver to root for, Hocevar is an easy driver to root for. We always talk about drivers having personality, and Hocevar is probably the number one guy that is going to fit that mold of drivers with personality. He's not afraid to be himself. He's not apologetic, and that's good in a lot of ways. But when it comes to the race car itself, he dealt with us a lot in the truck series, is just number one, getting to the end of these races. The speed obviously is there, the talent obviously is there, but it's getting the car to the end of the race. That's not always the case. Just statistics wise, out of the last 6 races, only one finish better than 28th. He finished 28th or worse in 5 of the last 6 races. So um, it's either he's running really well or really poor, and that's just what sent him on a topsy turvy run this last year. He's another one of those guys we talked about during the RFK episode with Ryan Preece. If Ryan goes out and wins a race, that the floodgates can open. Hocevar is probably one of the top guys that could do that. He goes out and gets his first win, and there's going to be more and more to follow after that. And I think if Carson can just clean up on a few things and realize that some days you are going to run 15th, don't try to take a 15th place car and get it to 10th and wreck and finish 30th. Just take your small victories, add them up, get to the chase, get close to that bubble, and if you make it in, that's great. I think that's definitely what their goal has to be this year, and I do think that it's achievable. But for Hocevar, just cleaning up on a few of those things and getting to the finish line has to be the number one goal, because 8 DNFs in any points format is not going to help you be a championship threat. And he has the talent to be a championship threat, but it's getting the car there at the end of the race. I think if he can do that, I think good things will come from the 77 team this year. And I do think that we'll see Hocevar in victory lane this year.
I think something just to kind of bounce off that is in those races, and you mentioned it, how he's not able to get at the finish line. He's a driver that I feel like once he starts making the mistakes, he has a really hard time, and it might be a mental thing, but avoiding them later in the race. Like, it seems like once he starts making the first couple mistakes, it continues on, and he damages and tarnishes his run in that single race even more. I feel like the Chicago Street Course race, if you go back and watch it, he started fading. And the moment he started fading, it wasn't 3 laps later or just so early on when he hit the wall. And so many other instances you go back and watch, once he starts kind of losing ground, he has a hard time just getting the confidence back up to be able to try to rally together with the team, rally together with the crew chief and your spotter, and try to figure out exactly how to take, what is happening with the car in a bad day and get it back up inside the top 10. It seems like that's something he's really struggled with. And it even happened in the truck series, the times he would make those mistakes, just trying to get back up to the front. Of course, his aggression is something that I don't know if we're ever going to see the end of, because he's very adamant in his interviews about saying that he is going to stay to that character. And even just kind of blowing it off, his demeanor always stays the same. That is still going to hurt him. If he continues those antics, no matter how he runs on the track, nobody's going to drive him or treat him with respect. And he's going to have to expect that. So it's going to make it even more challenging, even in the third year, a fourth year, fifth year. So hopefully he'll have the speed, and I think he will. It's just a matter of, yeah, just getting to the finish line first and just trying to avoid the mistakes. Don't overdrive the car. Like you said, Steve, just take what the car gives you. You're not going to be able to win a race from eighth place. If you're running an eighth, just take an eighth. Don't try to overdrive it, put yourself on the wall, and then lose out on 30 points that you could have had if you would have just finished in the spot you were in, because that would help him tremendously in just this format style. Because I feel like if you took away all the mistakes he made last year, he easily would have made, more than any other driver ahead of him. I feel like at least the top 10 guys ahead of him in points. You clean up those mistakes specifically from him, he could have outran, everybody and made the top 16 with the format that we have now. But um, we're gonna have to just keep our fingers crossed and see to believe it.
Yeah, one of the biggest things with Hocevar, even though he's in, what is this, year 3 of being at Spire, he's 22 years old. Right? All of the characteristics that we've just described are the things he needs to work on. And I'm not saying they aren't things he needs to work on. You guys are spot on. He actually turns 23 this month on the 28th. So at the time of we're recording this month, I don't know. Oh, this comes out the day after his birthday. So happy belated birthday to Carson Hocevar. But he's so young, and these are things that we tend to talk about with young guys, right? The biggest example of this is Kyle Busch, like the most glaring example, the one that I could draw the most parallels with is Kyle Busch. He's Kyle Busch, but he doesn't have the Hendrick equipment, so he's not always up there. But when he is, he's overdriving the hell out of the car. It's being young, coming up. You've got to learn. It's something that takes some time, and it's different. Him finishing this far back is different than if he was in, say a Hendrick car, or say he's in a Gibbs car or something like that, where you expect him to be up front. Then if he's in year 3 and he's still overdriving it, and he would have the development really around him. But not saying Spire isn't a good organization, but it's an organization where you might have to bump your head a few more times because you don't have the experience, the old heads in the building that kind of can help you along that track to get to where you're going. So just playing a little devil's advocate on Carson Hocevar. Of course, he needs to improve on all these things that we've mentioned and that you guys have mentioned, and you're spot on with the assessment. But I do think that he'll be able to, at some point, hone this in. Probably, hopefully this year, the sooner the better, because he could be a contender even in a Spire car, because Spire's on the come up, like we've been talking about. And in the same vein of how I was saying that Michael McDowell, we know who he is, we still don't really know who Carson Hocevar is. We've seen him be the little shithead this year, right? And get into run-ins and things like that, and kind of talking points off the track and on the track mistakes that he's made. But we still don't really know who he is as a driver yet, because he still has things that he needs to clean up. And if it continues to happen, this was really his first year that he got to compete and be up in the front consistently. And like you kind of saw, like I was saying, you're going to bang your head a couple times when you're learning and you're that young. So with him looking forward, just cleaning up those mistakes, I think that he has tremendous upside and tremendous potential, and he can go only as far as he's willing to learn to go. It's the same thing that you spent the first 6, 7, 8 years with Kyle Busch saying, like, man, that kid would be so good if he just stopped running into everything and blowing tires because he's overdriving the car. And, if he was more consistent and he kind of understood that this is a marathon, not a sprint, you're not going to win the race on lap 300 of 500 at Martinsville or something, right? If he could just hone it in just a little bit. But of course, you always want to be bringing in a driver. You don't want to have to pull it out of them. It's so much harder to pull aggression out of someone than to hone in a little bit of aggression. So with Hocevar, you need to learn as you get older. We need to see some sort of progression into this next year, then the year after that you're kind of learning from these mistakes. Because in the season, it didn't seem like he was learning because it happened so many times. But just get older, get more mature, and hone in that aggression and know when it's the right time to strike in order to win races and compete up with those big dogs.
Yeah, the talent on Hocevar is just raw. Like you said, Kyle Busch is a great example. The talent was raw, and then it just needed that time and to develop and become more mature. And that's what led Kyle Busch to becoming a 2-time champion in the Cup Series. Just, he's gotten a little better, but it's still not all the way there. I mean, you see him getting into these pissing matches over at Martinsville in the fall. I mean, and then he got it enough to where Jeff Gordon's talking about you after William Byron wins to lock himself into the championship 4 in a walk-off moment, and you're messing around, and it allows Jeff Gordon to have to acknowledge about your kind of clownery at Martinsville. So just get that under together, and I think he's going to win this year. Now, the question I do want to ask you guys is, he's not made many friends. Do we think over under 2.5 moments where Hocevar gets retaliation done to him?
I'll take the over. I'm going to say Kyle Busch, Zane Smith, and I bet Daniel Suarez. I bet somehow they're going to run into mi amigo and the Hocevar. I feel like that would be a fight. Suarez is not afraid to throw, and McDowell's familiar with that. Yeah, give me those 3, and maybe more.
Yeah, I won't say that it will be necessarily on the track stuff, but either some kind of pit road fight or like the big headline of the week, I could definitely see. I just think as far as like on track retaliation, especially with the chase format, I think there's too much risk out there for guys. And I think guys are going to realize that this year that they can't really afford a suspension this year. So I don't think we're going to see anything necessarily on the track, but I definitely think there's going to be some Twitter beef or some pit road fight or something like that. For entertainment, I would love to see that. I just don't think it'll be on the track.
For all the reasons that I stated that he needs to grow, I'm going to say that hopefully it will be the under. I cannot confidently say that because, like, the common thread that we've had through these team previews is you have to prove it to me. But I will be hopeful, I will be optimistic, and I will say that he will not have any sort of retaliation, at least not 3 times. Hopefully, he learns after 1 or 2. Um, but I'm looking for growth from him this season on the track, and hone in that aggression a little bit until it matters.
I could see it happening. I think the pay window is still open. These guys don't forget what Hocevar has done to them in the past, and I'm sure Hocevar is not done making enemies. So whether it's current enemies or future enemies, I think Hocevar might get the bumper just a handful of times at least in 2026.
I feel like if I remember right, there was an interview that McDowell had where he was saying that uh, Hocevar does not listen in team meetings and like will not take anybody's advice because he kind of does his own thing. But moving on, I've got Daniel Suarez here, and I hate to bring it up, but it was a abysmal year. I mean, it was such a disappointment. I feel like uh, for everybody that's a fan of his because he's definitely a fan favorite in the sport. I feel like, especially for the underdogs, guys you don't really see contending for the win. And Suarez can if the opportunity comes up, but unfortunately we're not there anymore like he was at Joe Gibbs. So pretty much every stat took a dip. 36 races, he finished 29th in points. Of course, he made the playoffs in 2024, but that was with the nail biter finish at Atlanta. If he missed out, he wouldn't have made the playoffs then either. So would have put him at 3 consecutive years where he would have missed the playoffs, which really would have took a hurt. So, but 29th, very unfortunate. No wins to the one he had at Atlanta. Only 2 top 5s and 7 top 10s. That's compared to 2024 stats of 4 top 5s and 9 top 10s. His average finish fell over 3 spots to a 20.89, and his average start took an even pretty much identical dip to a 23.5 from 2024's 20th.7, so 20.7 in qualifying. No poles, which he didn't have any last year. He's not a guy that really goes out and gets a lot of poles, but the unfortunate and worst stat for him was the DNFs. He had so many, errors on track. Some of it was self-induced, and then other times it was just getting caught up in moments that weren't really of his own doing. But it's just not the year. 9 DNFs is not going to put you anywhere remotely close to making chase format. And for him, it's just a matter of, again, and I feel like it's a theme for a lot of these drivers, but more importantly for him getting to the finish line, but also trying to find that competitive drive. Like he only led 35 laps this last season compared to 24. He led 209. He's not a guy that really goes out and just puts a whooping on the field. And it's kind of been a theme for I feel like his whole Cup career, and it's unfortunate because there's moments he shows up and you see what he's capable of, especially on road courses and then even some of the mile and a halves. But there's other times you just kind of wonder what he's doing out there. It's just absent of performance, and I think some of that might have carried from last year, just with Trackhouse kind of overall taking a dip and him kind of being there in the third car. It seemed like he was, of course, the staple of the Trackhouse bunch. And then as Pitbull stepped away, I'm not sure what kind of factor that might have had in the team and maybe his performance and sponsorship, but obviously something correlation wise, timing wise, you see his overall performance take a dip. So, uh, will he have an up year? I think there's a good chance. And I think that's because, it seemed like Trackhouse, the tenure was falling and he's stepping into a new ride and it's kind of a reset. But will he be able to continue and hold that throughout 2026? It's going to be tough. There's stiff competition, two hard teammates that he's going to have to go against. He's the third tier. This is his fifth team since he started racing Cup in 2017. I mean, this is your last shot, so you really need to go out and make a statement. But it's not going to be easy. And I feel like this car, as we've kind of gone on from 2022 to now, it's just not really suiting his driving style. I feel like he was better in the Gen 6. And obviously, we're not going backwards with time. I don't know how long the Gen 4, or I'm sorry, the next gen will be around, but it's just not looking good for Daniel. But hopefully, he'll have an up year, and I think Spire would be a good team for that to happen.
You see how popular he is. You got that win in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Mexico City, and that place went nuts for an O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. And it's everyone stood on their feet when he led at Mexico City or got towards the front in the Cup race. And you want Suarez to do really good. It's good for the sport if Suarez is up front consistently. And right now we just haven't seen that. And hopefully Spire, the change of scenery can help. We'll see if that can get it. I mean, 29th in points, you obviously can't be doing that, especially when you have teammates now like Michael McDowell and Carson Hocevar who are going to be running in the top 20 on a pretty consistent basis. So you can't be left in the weeds with these two guys because it almost felt like a Trackhouse. They were almost pushing him out the door for Connor Zilish. So that could be a reason for the dip in performance in 25 was just knowing that you're on your way out. That team maybe didn't get as many resources for the 99 because they didn't really, I wouldn't say care as much, but more focus was on the one and then the 88 and 25.
Yeah, Daniel Suarez, I don't really see that a huge improvement from him this year. Just because if you look at the equipment that he's stepping into, it's not like he's going up in equipment. He didn't really look good last year. Like you said, Dom, he's a really likable guy, especially when we tapped into the Mexico City market. Obviously, their home country driver. They were really excited for him, and everyone that I've ever seen talk about an interaction with him. He's a really cool guy, but being a cool guy, it's obviously kept him a ride, right? Because he's good with the sponsors. He has these sponsors that have stayed with him for a long time. But I just don't see. I didn't see anything last year that proved to me that there was any sort of upswing, that it was getting better. Obviously that was a ride that was destined for Zillage kind of from the beginning. But it doesn't feel like, even though it is a change of scenery, it's kind of, you're gonna be the third car at Spire. You were the third car at Trackhouse. You got outperformed by Ross Chastain, who is obviously a championship contender every single year. You got outperformed even on ovals by the guy that they brought in that's the road course specialist. And, obviously, there was external factors and there was all of this stuff, but it's his fifth different team. I don't think that he's a bad driver. I think that he has a career. He could be a career journeyman Like if you need a guy that will kind of tell you what's wrong with your car, he may not be able to get the most out of it, but he can help you along your journey. I think he'll help with the organization. I think that he's an asset to Spire Motorsports, but I don't necessarily think that this is going to be some sort of upswing year that will help him, succeed, into a back into the echelon of what he was when he was at Gibbs, or kind of the contention that he was in the first few years of Trackhouse. I kind of just think that this is going to be one of those stops, and however long his contract is, it'll probably play that out, and then he may go to Xfinity, he may call it quits, he may go to a different, mid to lower tier team in the Cup Series. But I really just don't see anything from him or anything from the third Spire car that tells me that this pairing is really going to make him that much better than he was last year with Trackhouse.
All right. So, Daniel Suarez, will he finish top 25 in the standings?
I don't think so. Like the points that you guys brought up, first of all, he's in probably the worst Spire car that there is. The 7 car just doesn't perform like the other 2 cars do. And you're on your 5th Cup Series team. I don't think it's from necessarily a lack of talent, but I think you have a statistic like that tied to your name. Obviously, it's not motivating by any means. And look at the statistics from last year, just an abysmal season. I mean, just nothing really positive to take anything from it, which is unfortunate because Daniel is a very nice guy to talk with, and I do wish him success. I just don't think it's going to be enough for top 25 in points, unfortunately.
I'm going to agree with that. I want Daniel to have a really good year, but it's going to be very hard to achieve it. The thing with Spire in recent years, and it's only really been the last 2 years, but you can tell that they're really trying to make a push for drivers. I feel like to, show what they're capable of and actually put them in position to make not just the chase, but to start getting them wins for the team. I feel like they put that trust in Michael McDowell early on for super speedways. They put it now in Carson Hocevar just because he has the raw talent and great on track speed. But will Suarez have that? That's a good question mark. Corey LaJoy didn't. They kept on to him for a while, then they let him go. Justin Haley, a lot shorter of a tenure. It didn't take long, and then they let him go. I feel like they're starting to kind of pick up on the sense that they really need to start getting, drivers that are capable of getting them in the winner circle. I don't think Daniel can do that, and I'm not sure the numbers are going to be there, just with the given circumstances. So I'm going to say he finishes maybe kind of around where he did. I'll say 29th, 30th in points. I also think some of the teams below him, like some of the front row guys, um, you've got Riley Herbst back there, Cole Custer. I think they can have up years to where they would outrun the third tier Spire car, and that's unfortunate, but just kind of where Suarez is at in his career.
Yeah, I would probably keep it short and sweet. I don't think he does it either. Just for the points that I said before, he's the third Spire car. He was the third Trackhouse car, and it just doesn't seem like the performance is there. I'm not 100% sure how long his contract is, if it's a one and done or if it's a couple of years. But regardless, I think when this contract's done, I think if Raja doesn't get the 48, then I think Raja will be in that car, um, probably in 2027, unless they want to let him cook a little bit more. But I think that 7 car will be Raja, and then whenever it's his turn to be at Hendrick, he'll be at Hendrick. But I see, Suarez not really performing. I not necessarily underperforming because that car's kind of been bad, but just kind of performing where that car's been. I don't see him taking it on the upswing, making it a great car, and no, I don't see him being in the top 25 in points.
Yeah, it'll be outside the top 25, and give me Suarez in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 27. I think that's his best bet. Get a top tier ride there, and if you have to, pull a Justin Allgaier and be a O'Reilly Auto Parts full-time driver, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can sustain success there, which he has a championship there, there's nothing bad about that. I'd rather be winning races there than running 30th in the Cup Series. Now, that was a Spire Motorsports 2026 season preview. Just to look ahead, we have 4 more season previews until we got our big preview for the Daytona 500. Don't forget, though, Monday, we will be doing the Clash recap, so a little breakup in the season previews. And then we'll get to Legacy on Tuesday and Colleague on Thursday. And then the week after that, Front Row. Now we got Hayek, Haas, and Rick Ware Racing on Tuesday, the 10th. Our 2026 season predictions on Wednesday, the 11th. That's 3 episodes in 3 days, so I hope you guys can keep up. And our Daytona 500 preview that Friday before the Daytona 500. If you aren't following us yet, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, anything you've got on social media, Forward Field Podcast, right there. YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Spotify, Apple, follow us there. If you're listening on your way home, on your drive into work, the episodes get uploaded at midnight on Monday mornings and Thursday mornings. So Monday morning commute, throw us on. Thursday morning commute, throw us on as well. And if you like the visual aspect, Sam's been killing it with the graphics. So make sure you're checking that out as well. But for Sam, Wes, Steve, I'm Dom, and we'll see you next week for more season previews.